Welcome to China Focus. I'm Shelley Zhang. Now, many of us take for granted the ability to just go on the internet and browse the latest headlines or search for whatever we want to know. But in China, with the Great Firewall and a vast censorship apparatus, it's not that easy. Still, despite the filtering and restrictions, millions of people in China are able to connect in a way they never have before. The Committee to Protect Journalists has just come out with a report on the issue called Challenged in China, the Shifting Dynamics of Censorship and Control. Joining me today is Bob Dietz, the Asia Program Coordinator for CPJ. Thanks for joining us, Bob.
Thanks, Shelley.
So when a lot of us think about censorship in the media or censorship, we think of, blacked out TV reports or newspapers that all carry the same party line. What does the censorship of the internet look like in China?
It's pretty sophisticated at this point. Using that term, the Great Firewall of China, doesn't really quite catch the way it works. There certainly is a technical apparatus at work, of filtering and ways of blocking access to websites, but it's much more sophisticated than that. As you said in your intro, there's a tremendous number of people online in China now, much more than in the United States, much more than even there are people in the United States. And it's become wildly popular, and the government is really committed to expanding the internet and access to it. They recognize its economic power and how that helps the economy. To control all that traffic takes a lot more than just a couple routers and switches which are programmed to watch for words that aren't approved.
We have a lot of people involved in that, right?
You do. What the government has done is they've established several tiers of control. One is to control people who are active dissidents. Who are trying to, say, organize a democratic party or calling for Taiwanese independence or dealing with Falun Gong or critical of the army. Absolute no-go areas of discussion in China. And those people are pretty much closely watched. And frankly, most people know now that you just don't go into those areas. And if you do, you're really liable to real harassment or arrest by the government.
So that's the tightest kind of...
That's the tightest. But on this much broader, popular basis, there's a system of controlling this. There is filtering, and there are techniques. Mechanical techniques for just stopping conversations or monitoring what people are doing. But there's so much activity that it gets to be nearly impossible. What the government has done is they've put the responsibility for controlling content onto the companies which run the internet, to the ISP providers, to Sina.com, to those entities which host all this activity. The companies themselves are responsible for controlling that the flow of information.
So it would be like if Facebook were to censor itself, or Twitter were to censor itself?
Pretty much. And they do that in a couple different ways. One, they use filtering technology, and there are no questions about it, that if you look for Tiananmen on Weibo, China's version of Facebook, that's filtered, and you won't get a response, and you might even be cut off from access to the internet for anywhere from 30 seconds to much longer. In addition to that, they use, and I don't know how to put a number on this, but they use thousands and thousands, most likely hundreds of thousands of human beings to monitor activity on servers, so that
they call them internet police, right?
Yes, and at one point there were cartoon characters that the service providers would put up, sort of saying, "Let's watch what you're saying. Let's be careful here," and they would come in on politically sensitive subjects, but they'd also come in when you know how abusive especially guys can get online, sort of slashing back and forth and arguing, they would appear then. On top of that level of people monitoring activity, you have another group of people who are aware of what's going on outside and trying to prevent or circumvent subjects from arising. Rather than having to cut them off after people are discussing them, they try and head off conversations about breaking news. You might remember there was a terrible train accident in Guangzhou, a high-speed train.
The high-speed rail crash in
Yes.
Guangzhou, yeah.
And there was an immediate online response of trying to curtail discussion about that. Users in China are, especially the politicized users, are they know how to get around that. They use code words. They use different terms, which are sometimes funny, sometimes cryptic, about referring to incidents, which the sensors, the filtering systems won't be able to pick up.
So there are still ways that people can get around all the censorship in China.
Yes. Yes.
And how is that social media aspect affecting journalism in the country?
Well, it's affected it like it has everywhere else. It turns out you have this state apparatus sort of coming down, trying to control this this very large system, very chaotic, very rambunctious system. What you have coming up from underneath are the grassroots, which are driving public discussion and what people are talking about, and bringing local incidents into national prominence, so that a village riot in Guangzhou would, if there were, let's say, a really bad police reaction to villagers protesting losing land or something like that, that could be driven up and become more nationally known before the censorship or that filtering apparatus gets to work. That, in turn, drives the more mainstream media, the broadcasters, the newspapers, and people respond to that. Newspapers might send reporters to this village or this township where this outbreak or riot is going on. So you have this heavy sort of domed. Actually, the technical term for the Great Firewall of China is called the Golden Shield Project, which was established in 1998, I think it was, which the government is trying to control this digital world. And underneath you have people making a real use of it and sort of driving issues, driving discussions, driving topics, and bringing them up constantly.
Well, one thing I want to talk about was very interesting in the CPJ report. You talked about the idea that there is kind of a China model of internet censorship.
Yes.
That, you know, we're seeing more. Are we seeing more countries develop something similar to what China uses?
People are certainly looking at it. In Southeast Asia, we've seen it happen in Vietnam, where just like China, internet penetration is very deep. It's a culture and it's a country that's really jumped on the internet. Again, they see the economic importance of this interconnectivity, and they've tried to adapt some of the Chinese techniques. I think most people think that what you need are the machines that can catch the bad words, and you tweak that all the time, and that's the way you do it. But when they learn, the manpower that's involved, they try to adapt things and play them differently. Vietnam, much more willing to crack down on people ex post facto after something's happened online, after bloggers, particularly people pushing for democracy and or are critical of Vietnam's relationship with China, they will speak out and they will get hammered. You see much less of that in China, where you have this preemptive censoring system, which prevents people from doing that so much that you don't have people being victimized as much by the state. Now, the numbers in China are much larger, but that's when compared to a country like Vietnam. You know, the numbers are larger.
So what about countries like Iran? Do we see them kind of doing the same thing?
Yes, this model exists, and certainly all these countries are really talking with each other, or looking at ways of controlling this flow of information. The China model is there. I think it's seen as the most effective way of doing it, but other countries adapt it and don't always go the full distance that China has.
Are Chinese authorities kind of promoting this type of internet censorship to other countries?
They are, and other countries are seeking it out. China has a reputation as being, you know, a country which has come to grips, or has come to grips, but has met with some degree of success in terms of controlling flow of information on the internet on a very large scale. People come to them asking for advice, and China certainly offers it up and goes out, offering it to other countries.
So let me ask a kind of final question here. You know, you mentioned in your report you have some recommendations for the Chinese government, but then you also say in your report that the Communist Party considers independent journalism and expression as explicit political threats. So how could, you know, is it possible for the Communist Party to take these recommendations without there being a kind of a larger change in the political system?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? That how flexible can the Communist Party be? And we've seen it struggling to redefine itself every year.
Unfortunately, we're out of time today. Bob, thank you so much again for joining us. And for more on this topic, you can see the CPJ report at the web address below. And thank you for watching. And for more on this and others in China, join us at ntd.tv.